On my birthday, my whole family humiliated me and made a cake that humiliated me. My name is Eldon, and I'm 27 years old. For most of my life, if you'd asked me about my family, I would have probably smiled and told you we were a little complicated, but close. That's how I saw it, or maybe that's what I wanted to believe. We weren't perfect, but who is? We had our quirks, too many opinions at the dinner table, plenty of unasked for advice, and a tendency to speak in suggestions that always felt like judgment in disguise. But even then, I thought they meant well. I really did. This story is about the moment I stopped making excuses for them. The moment everything shifted. It started on a Wednesday. My birthday was that Saturday, and I wasn't planning anything. I'd been laid off almost 3 months earlier, and even though I was still actively applying, interviews had been sparse and savings were getting tight. I live alone in a small apartment about 30 minutes outside of Roanoke. Quiet neighborhood. Leaky faucets. But it's mine. Birthdays have never been a huge deal for me. Growing up, they were always more about the family getting together than about me. And now, as an adult, they just felt performative. I didn't want anyone pretending to be cheerful or writing those snide, backhanded greetings in a $1.99 card. Usually, someone, often my cousin Marlene or my older sister Beryl, would make a passive remark around this time of year. Something like, maybe this will be the year Eldon finally settles down, or, hope your next lap around the sun includes a little direction. They meant it as a joke, but it rarely felt like one. So when I got a message from Marlene early Friday morning, saying the family had planned a dinner for me that evening, I was skeptical. Still, she was one of the few people I got along with. She'd moved out at 17, paid her own way through community college, and never seemed interested in the petty games that the rest of them played. She had a quiet strength about her that I respected. Her text just said, "Dinner at Rosetta's. 6 p.m., we made a reservation. It's for you." I stared at it for a moment. Thought about ignoring it. But something told me to go. Maybe it would be fine. Maybe it would be different this time. I showed up on time. Wore dark jeans, a gray button-down shirt, and my cleanest pair of boots. Nothing flashy, just enough effort to show I appreciated the invitation, even if I wasn't feeling festive. Rosetta's is one of those faux authentic Italian places. Soft lighting, fake vines hanging from wooden beams, and crooners playing overhead just loud enough to make conversations require leaning in. I spotted them immediately, my family, already seated at a long table near the back. My mother and father were at one end, my sister Beryl beside them, thumbing through her phone. My uncle Reuben, more on him later, was at the center, animated as ever, telling some boisterous story about a coworker who cried during a staff meeting. Typical Reuben. I took the only open seat left, right beside Marlene. She gave me a polite smile. "Happy birthday," she said softly. I noticed her eyes didn't meet mine. Something in her posture felt tense. I should have picked up on that. Dinner started off fine. A few awkward toasts. Some forced laughter. My mother said I looked put together, and then added, "I'm glad you finally found a shirt that fits you right." Beryl kept checking her phone like she was waiting for a better reason to leave. Once the food came, the conversation turned to everyone's recent updates. Marlene had gotten promoted, claps all around. My younger cousin Jonas had been accepted into a university 3 states away, big applause. Then the spotlight shifted to me. "So, how's the job search going?" my mother asked. I offered a small shrug. "Still sending things out. Had a phone interview yesterday. Nothing set in stone yet." She nodded while cutting into her lasagna. "Well, sometimes you have to take what you can get. A job is a job, especially at your age." Beryl smirked into her drink. My dad cleared his throat but stayed quiet. I felt my chest tighten. I wasn't holding out for perfection. I was just trying not to lose myself in a job I'd hate. Again. Then Uncle Reuben leaned forward. "When I was your age, I was doing night shifts and still managed to paint houses during the day. No shame in putting in the work, Eldon." He always said my name like it was sour on his tongue. "You're not above it." "I never said I was," I replied quietly. Beryl added, in that sing-song tone she used when she was about to say something sharp, "We just want you to get unstuck. It's hard watching you flail around like this." Marlene gently nudged my knee under the table. I forced a smile. "Thanks for the support." Then came the cake. A waiter wheeled it out, a big rectangle, white frosting, red piping, and a single candle. Everyone sang. I tried to go along with it. Just let it be a moment. I even smiled as I blew out the candle. Then I read the cake. Still trying. That's all it said. No name. No happy birthday. Just those 2 words in bold red letters. Still trying. I blinked. Thought maybe I was imagining it. Then I heard laughter. Beryl was laughing the hardest, covering her mouth, eyes watering. It's just a joke, she said between breaths. Don't take it so seriously. Uncle Reuben slapped the table. That's a good one. That's quality. I didn't say anything. I just stared at it. My own birthday cake, a punchline. I looked to my mother. She wore that tight-lipped expression she always did when someone got their feelings hurt. It's not that deep face. It's meant to be funny, she said. We love you. You know that. Do I? I stood up, grabbed my jacket. Marlene looked up. Eldon, she whispered. I'm okay, I said. Then I leaned slightly toward Reuben and said a single sentence, soft, barely audible. He went pale. The laugh caught in his throat. I walked out. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't look back. That night, I turned off my phone. No text responses. No apologies. No jokes trying to smooth it over. Just silence. And for the first time in a long while, that silence felt good. Peaceful. It stayed that way for nearly 2 weeks. Then the calls started. My mother, multiple times. Beryl. Even my dad, who almost never called on his own. One after another, voicemails filled with urgency. Please call us back. There's been a misunderstanding. You went too far. We need to talk. That last one was my favorite. We need to talk. As if what happened at dinner hadn't already spoken volumes. You're probably wondering what I said to Reuben. What could I have possibly whispered to make a man like him, confident, smug, always the loudest in the room, go suddenly quiet? It was simple. I know about the will. That's all it took. I hadn't planned to say it. But standing there in that restaurant, after being made into a walking punchline for the 100th time, something just broke open. Not rage. Not even anger. Just clarity. They didn't just look down on me. They needed me to stay beneath them. The struggling one. The uncertain one. The one they could quietly compare themselves to and feel better about their own choices. As long as I remained the work in progress, they didn't have to deal with their own disappointments. But I wasn't the one hiding anything. They were. 6 months before that dinner, I'd been helping my parents clean out the attic. My father had strained his shoulder lifting a box the week prior, and my mother said she needed someone to finally go through all that old paper. So I went. I didn't have much else going on. It was exactly what I expected, dusty plastic bins full of tax folders, childhood art projects, tangled Christmas lights. I was nearly done when I saw a slim manila folder tucked behind a wicker basket. No label. Faded at the edges. I almost threw it away. But I opened it. Inside was a stack of bank statements, a few typed letters, and a legal document bearing my grandfather's name, Harlan Ellery. I'd only met my grandfather a handful of times growing up. He'd passed when I was in high school. Sharp man. Quiet. Ran his own supply business in the Midwest and left what we thought was a clean, equal inheritance to his 3 children, my mom, Reuben, and their younger brother, Kenneth, who had moved out west years ago. I remember seeing the will back then. A basic 3-way split. Nothing flashy. The only time I saw my mom cry about it. She said it was exactly what Dad would have wanted. But what I found in that folder told a different story. There were 2 versions of the will. The first, the one I remembered, split everything evenly. The second, labeled Addendum, March 2009, included a condition: Reuben was to receive no inheritance if he failed to repay a $48,000 loan from the family business within 6 months. A note, handwritten and signed by my grandfather, was stapled to the addendum. It detailed the loan, how Reuben had promised repayment, how disappointed Harlan was when the money never came back. The addendum was notarized. Stamped. Legally valid. And then there were the bank statements, proof that, despite the addendum, Reuben had received a full one-third of the estate shortly after the probate process began. I sat there in the attic, cross-legged on a box of Halloween decorations, going through every page again and again. Trying to understand. How did this happen? I didn't confront anyone then. Not because I was scared, but because I genuinely didn't know what to do. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe the document hadn't made it to the court. Maybe the lawyer had overlooked it. But I took photos of everything. Every page. Every statement. Every signature. And then I waited. If you're wondering why I didn't bring it up right away, it's because I didn't see it as my fight. I wasn't part of the estate. I wasn't owed a thing. This was old business between my grandfather and his children. If it ever came up again, I figured my mom or Kenneth would sort it out. But when they brought out that cake, when they reduced me to a punchline and smiled like it was all in good fun, I realized something. They'd already chosen their sides. They had made peace with things I couldn't even say out loud. So I whispered those 5 words to Reuben. And I walked out. For the next few days, the messages picked up. Texts from Beryl, changing tone, quickly going from sarcastic to desperate. What did you say to Uncle Reuben? You need to fix this. You can't destroy the family over something that happened years ago. Destroy the family? They'd done that themselves. I just pulled back the curtain. Eventually, Marlene reached out. One short message. You should check your email. Attached was a screenshot, Reuben's Facebook post. A long, passive-aggressive rant about how younger people don't understand what real responsibility looks like, and how some folks would rather tear others down than lift themselves up. He didn't name names. But the comments section made it clear who he was talking about. Some relatives rushed to his defense. Others asked questions. A few said things like, I always thought that will seem too clean. That's when I knew the tide was shifting. For the first time, the family wasn't unified in brushing me off. Some were finally asking the questions I'd been holding onto for months. And then, just like that, the group chat lit up. The family group chat had been muted on my phone for ages. I didn't even remember the name they gave it, something like, the Ellery Crew with a string of emojis. It had become background noise, a space for birthday wishes, potluck plans, and the occasional political argument no one wanted to finish. But that morning, something told me to open it. 138 unread messages. It started with Reuben's post. Beryl had shared it in the chat, tagging a few people who had liked it online, asking what was going on. My mother chimed in almost immediately. Let's not escalate anything. Reuben's just expressing how he feels. Marlene responded. Is he? Or is he trying to spin something before the truth catches up? Then came the screenshots. The amendment. The notarized documents. The emails I'd sent to Marlene and Aunt Melissa, Kenneth's widow, who had always kept a quiet distance from the Ellery family. One by one, the relatives started reacting. Some with confusion. A few with disappointment. One of my second cousins, who I hadn't spoken to since a wedding 4 years ago, wrote. If that amendment is real, and someone ignored it, that's not a misunderstanding. That's fraud. And just like that, the silence broke. I received a call from Melissa that afternoon. She's not someone who reaches out casually. She's polite, distant, and always seemed to hover at the edge of Ellery family drama without ever stepping into it. But now she was on the phone with me at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday, and her voice was clear. Eldon, thank you for coming forward. I didn't know how to respond. She continued, I always had a strange feeling about the estate. Kenneth mentioned something before he passed. He said your grandfather had made some changes near the end, and that he didn't think everyone would be happy about them. But I never saw anything. Never got a copy of the updated will. I found it in the attic, I told her. Along with letters and bank records. You kept them? I scanned everything. There was a pause. Then she said, simply, would you send them to me? I did. Every file. Every note. The photos I'd taken. I even included the original timestamps, showing when they were discovered. 3 days later, I heard from her again. She had a lawyer. That's when the real panic started. I began getting calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Most went to voicemail. Some were from attorneys, one asking if I'd be open to answering questions, informally. Others were more subtle, coming from longtime family acquaintances, folks I hadn't seen since I was a teenager, all saying versions of the same thing. Think about what this is doing to your mother. Family is more important than legal documents. Don't let bitterness push you into burning bridges. As if I'd done something out of spite. I didn't start the fire. I just pointed at the smoke. One voicemail stood out. My father. Eldon. I didn't know. I really didn't. I thought it was settled fairly. I never saw that amendment. Your mother handled most of the process. I believed him. Not because he had never been involved, he rarely was, but because he sounded tired. Honest, in a way I hadn't heard in years. He called again a few days later. I answered this time. He didn't say hello. Just. I'm sorry about the dinner. I kept walking down the street as he spoke. The leaves were falling. The sky was overcast. Everything felt heavy. It was mean, he continued. The cake. The jokes. I didn't think it would get to you that much. I stopped walking. That's the problem, I said. No one ever thinks I have the right to be hurt. He didn't argue. Just let the silence hang. Then, slowly. What do you want me to do? I wasn't ready to answer that yet. Meanwhile, Melissa's lawyer was making moves. He submitted a formal request to the probate court for a review of the estate handling. The original executor, an old family attorney who had since retired, was contacted. To everyone's surprise, he still had archived files. And those files? They didn't include the amendment. Not even a mention of it. What they did include, though, were signed documents, communications, and estate settlement forms all listing two primary contacts, Reuben and my mother. Only two people had access to the will paperwork during the filing period. Only two could have removed that addendum. It didn't take much digging to see what had happened. Melissa's lawyer compiled everything. The scanned documents I'd provided. The missing amendment from the original submission. Even a brief statement from the retired attorney, confirming that Harlan had mentioned making last-minute changes before his passing, and that he had instructed his children to include them. But someone hadn't. Someone had made a choice. And that someone was now sitting on a $200,000 inheritance that may have never been legally his to begin with. As the legal process moved forward, the family chat went strangely quiet. Then, out of nowhere, Beryl posted. "You're really going to tear this family apart over old paperwork?" To which Marlene replied. "If the paperwork is fake, there's nothing to worry about. If it's real, then maybe it wasn't a family worth preserving in the first place." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. But a few hours later, I got a message from Melissa. The court is opening an inquiry. The judge approved a preliminary review. It's happening. That's when the real unraveling began. Once the court inquiry began, everything changed. Reuben stopped posting online. My mother stopped calling. Beryl, after a week of angry texts and emotional guilt trips, went silent too. And in their place came emails, formal letters, and appointment requests. Not from them, but from lawyers. Melissa's attorney had done his work. Thorough, methodical, and completely unshaken by the emotional dust storm our family kicked up. He wasn't interested in drama. He was interested in records. Receipts. Documents. Truth. It turned out that Reuben hadn't just received his share of the estate unlawfully. He'd also transferred nearly $30,000 to my mother shortly afterward, quietly, and without any explanation noted in the settlement files. Melissa's legal team didn't miss that. Neither did the court. They traced the amendment's original notarized version back to Harlan's local bank branch. The notary public who had witnessed it was still employed there, and remembered the day clearly. He said he needed to make sure his wishes were protected. That's the word he used, protected. The court listened. And then it acted. The judge's ruling was thorough. Reuben had knowingly omitted a valid amendment from the estate filing. That omission resulted in the wrongful distribution of assets, including to himself. He was ordered to return his entire third of the inheritance, plus interest. The total came to nearly $230,000. My mother was fined $12,500 for her role in the concealment and required to submit a signed affidavit acknowledging her part in the omission. The funds she received were also considered part of the misappropriated estate and had to be repaid. They tried to negotiate. Tried to soften the language. But Melissa refused. She wanted it in writing. A record that what had happened wasn't a misunderstanding. It was fraud. The fallout was swift. Reuben lost the lake cabin he'd bought the same year the estate was settled. It went into foreclosure before winter. He left the family group chat. His wife deleted her social media accounts. The cousins who used to fawn over him started backing away, quietly, as if not to be noticed. My mother tried to do damage control. She called distant relatives. Sent handwritten cards. Spoke of confusion and grief clouding judgment. But people weren't buying it anymore. One of my aunts, someone who'd once sent me a long-winded email about family loyalty, called Melissa and apologized. Beryl, in one last effort, posted a vague photo on social media of a snake coiled around a family tree. Marlene and I laughed about that one for a while. She'd been one of the only ones to stand by me through the entire ordeal. Never made me feel like I was overreacting. Never once asked me to be quieter. We'd started meeting for coffee every few weeks. A kind of ritual. No heavy topics. Just a space to breathe. And slowly, I started rebuilding. I landed a new job with a remote operations firm. It wasn't flashy, but it was steady. Quiet. I could work from home. The kind of role that let me finally exhale without pretending I was fine. I moved to a smaller neighborhood, closer to the trails, a little further from the noise. I started therapy. Learned how to set boundaries, how to let go of the version of myself that always played the peacekeeper. The apologizer. And then, one day, I realized, I wasn't the black sheep anymore. I wasn't the disappointment. Not to myself. Not to the people who mattered. And certainly not to the family that had depended on my silence. I never spoke to my mother again after the ruling. She sent a letter, 3 pages long. I opened it, read the first line, and fed it through the shredder. I wasn't interested in hearing how she did what she thought was best. That excuse had expired. My dad did reach out. He didn't try to defend anyone. He didn't ask for forgiveness, either. He just showed up. We had coffee one afternoon, same table where I used to sit as a kid while he read the paper. He told me he wished he'd paid closer attention. That he'd stayed silent for too long. I just wanted everything to stay simple, he said. I nodded. But it wasn't simple. No, he agreed. It wasn't. I told him he could be part of my life, but not if he was still pretending. And to his credit, so far, he hasn't. On my next birthday, Marlene brought a cake. It was smaller, homemade. Chocolate, with white frosting. 3 words written on the top. Still standing. Stronger. We laughed. But for me, it wasn't just a joke. It was the truth. They had tried to make me into a symbol of failure. A punchline. But what they didn't understand is, when you've been written off for long enough, when people keep casting you in a role you never chose, you either become the character, or you write your own ending. I chose the second. And now? Now I sleep well. Thank you all for watching the video, and see you soon.